It gives me great pleasure to hand over to Rachel Griffiths, living between two worlds. And Rachel is a participative theatre maker. I won't say any more, and hand over to you.
Thank you very much. No, I'm plugged in. I think, yes, you can hear me. Thank you very much, Sue. And what an absolute honour it is to start the day. And I kind of say welcome, but it's not my house. But let's just, in the spirit of welcome, one to the other. I've got the memo. You got the memo. Brett got the memo. Who else got the memo about electric blues? A lot of us here in our electric blues. So there's a serendipity already taking place across the day. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last year, my friend Mark. We've known each other 30 years. Yeah, we met about 25, 30 years ago. And we were having one of those conversations where it kind of was spiraling down. We were talking probably a bit about politics, we were talking about England, and then we got into Brexit, and he's lived a lot in Spain. And I'm like, why are we in Spain? Why are we here? It's a terrible place. We probably got onto the weather, and just one of those ones where you just go, yeah. And then I said, yeah, but Mark, I still have hope. And he looked at me, Rachel, just how? And I think it's a really good question. I think it's a good question, and maybe it's the question we're asking ourselves today. How, or indeed why, do we have hope, those of us who do? The joy of dropping your notes is then end up in a completely different order. So just talk among yourselves. Well, I find page 1, fabulous. And page 3, right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you for the welcome. I work as a participatory theatre maker, and that means nothing if you aren't in that world. So it basically means that I find myself in gatherings with people, and most often those people are from communities who find themselves on the margins of society. Perhaps they experience some kind of oppression due to their immigration status, perhaps due to race, due to their address. And I collaborate with these people to share a story that they have decided they want people to hear and that people need to hear. And they do that, and we do that in the hope that things might change in the future. And by co-creating theatre together, we begin to awaken our imaginations to the hope of a different outcome, a future which does not yet exist in their lives, that I've not yet borne witness to. And I suppose in a way that's really what I'm here to open up with, that we might awaken our imaginations today, because I think hope exists as an act of imagination as well as a practice. And I can testify to seeing hope emerge from our endeavours in the theatre space to tell the stories of difficult things. Recently, I was working with a group of women from Greenwich, which is in southeast London, and together we made a performance called Count Yourself Lucky. The project had been funded to explore the barriers that migrant women face in ante and postnatal care, barriers that are often unseen. And through some listening workshops and some theatre practice, we discerned that actually, it's a game of chance. A woman might have her first child and receive wonderful care and empathy and understanding, and then the second child, she might be misunderstood, assumptions will be made about her culture, she'll be spoken to in a certain way, she'll be neglected because of certain reasons, her whole story will be ignored. But you just never knew what you'd get. And so we made a performance called Count Yourself Lucky. And the performance involved a roll of a dice on a board game of snakes and ladders, where you might get lucky and end up at the bottom of a ladder and go up, and then we would share a scene popping up of a wonderful experience in a hospital, and then you might hit a snake from the roll of the dice and go down the snake, and then a performance would pop up of something really difficult and painful. And we performed this performance publicly and also in front of professional health carers and the funders and people who work with women before and during and after having their babies. And there's a lot out there. This is just in London. This was just in a pocket of southeast London. And you think, gosh, how can we even begin to imagine that this is going to make any difference? And then I was told anecdotally that at the performance for healthcare professionals, one woman who was a healthcare visitor, so she tends to mothers pretty much more after they've given birth, she had an appointment that very afternoon. And on account of what she'd seen, she changed the language that she used with her patient, with the person she was looking after. She changed her approach and her language. That woman was an asylum seeker, and she realised that she needed to shift her practice on account of what she'd witnessed in that performance. And so by making theatre about difficult issues, it's hard, so it's hard to be hopeful. But equally, by making theatre about difficult issues, we challenge hope. And I like to imagine that in a kind of way of saying, come on then, hope. Where are you? Show your face. I know you're there somewhere, and we are not leaving until you show up. I'm fortunate also to draw my work from the methodology of Augusto Boal. Many of you might have heard of Augusto Boal. He was a Brazilian theatre practitioner, a director, whose work kind of became globally recognised in the 1970s. And all over the world, there are people running Augusto Boal Theatre of the Oppressed workshops. And so I draw a lot from that. He worked with communities of people, none of them actors. By the way, I don't work with actors. I wouldn't know what's in the room full of actors. I work with people who are not professional actors. But Boal would work with communities of people who were experiencing oppression. And he would ask them to act out the scenario of their oppression. And then he would ask the audience, who were no longer called spectators but spectactors, to intervene. I see some nodding heads. You may be well know of this work. So the scene would be played out, maybe the oppressor, the rich guy who wants to take the land away from the farmers, and they play out the scene. And then the spectators would say, no, you need to say it differently. You need to speak to that person in another way. Let me show you how. And then the person would come from the audience and take part in the scene and change the script and change the narrative. There's a lot of his work that is available online. I urge you to have a look. And Augusto Boal believed in the creative process also as a means of imagining change we want to see. And he said theatre can help us build our future rather than just waiting for it. We don't need to be in a theatre for this to take place. I've done my work in all sorts of strange places. Classrooms, community centres, streets in South India, rooftops also in South India where I thought that we were going to have a room and they said, here you are, and it was a rooftop and no edges, just a drop down there and 40 degrees of heat, glorious. It can also happen in a university, in a chapel across the lake in a university, we don't know. But that's imagination through theatre making. And then I want to touch also on imagination and hope in community organising, which I'm also involved in. In 2017, I co-founded a local community group of neighbours called Herne Hill, where I live. Herne Hill welcomes refugees. And we came together to undertake a government scheme called community sponsorship. Can you raise your hand if you've heard of it? Because I was, 2, amazing. So this is the problem. 3, wonderful. 4, it's getting better. I have a lot of work to do. It's still not well enough known. So briefly, community sponsorship is a government scheme to enable communities of faith groups or neighbours, I think there's even a rugby club doing it, book clubs, schools, but a community of people to welcome a refugee family to their neighbourhood. And the group of people have to come together to find a property that the family will live in, that is rentable at housing benefit rates. You have to source school places, have to provide information of where the doctor will be, the dentist, the optician, to really enable that family to integrate, to live in the locality. A house has to be made available for 2 years. The family come with refugee status, so they are eligible for work and for claiming benefits. And so we did this work, and in 2018 we welcomed an Iraqi family to Herne Hill, and then in 2021 we welcomed a Syrian family to Herne Hill. It was a lot of work, all those good things are really hard work, aren't they? It was hard and it was joyful and still one of the most significant things I'll ever be a part of. And because we were just a group of neighbours, we needed a bit of underpinning by some structure. So we joined Lambeth Citizens, who are part of Citizens UK. I'm sure many of you know Citizens UK. And they're a community organising charity. And I will never forget my first Lambeth Citizens meeting. It was in a local school, primary school, an Islamic local primary school, and we were sat huddled around. You know when you go to, as a grown-up, you go to a meeting in the school and you're sitting on chairs for 4-year-olds? Yeah, so we were, like this, on our little chairs, and there was a woman who's a rabbi from the Liberal Synagogue, and then there's me, there's a community organiser, there was a gentleman from the local mosque, there was a young person from a charity called the Advocacy Academy, all of us hodgepodge people coming together around these small tables to seek the common good, drinking our tea and our rich tea biscuits, which is a very niche English reference, my apologies. Just a super basic biscuit, but it does the job. And I sat there and I realised, it occurred to me that I had discovered something that I didn't know I'd been looking for. You know those moments when you go, oh no, I didn't know this was what I needed, and here I am. It was just this extraordinary gathering of people from different walks of life. As I say, all of us hopeful, and you mentioned anger, Sue, a little bit angry, which is another talk, which I love to talk. I love anger in a good way, in the way that it can be the catalyst for change. So being a good student, I went along to all the community organising training, 2-day training, 6-day training. And as I did so, I realised there was a great resonance for me between that practice and the practice of theatre making with communities. The way that meetings are structured, the way that you have to talk about what you feel in the moment, the way relationships are intentionally built, and the powerful act of listening. And it's in also the wrestling through the discernment and disagreement in the pursuit of the common goal, and really the action. Community organisers don't just have meetings, they act. They deliver actions. That might be a meeting, but it also might be a letter to the leader of the council. It might be a school choir performing outside a town hall. It could be a piece of theatre in the street. And recently I was working with a group of Latin American domestic workers who are campaigning for the living wage and for living hours against 0 hours contracts. So we created a scene demonstrating the effect on people who have 0 hours contract. The precarity of their work, meaning they don't get to spend time with their families. They can't make plans with friends. They can't make sure or know that they will have enough money at the end of the month to pay their bills. And of course, the impact on people's well-being. And as part of the campaign, we made a performance which was shared at the recent London Mayoral Assembly in front of the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, and 2,000 Londoners. And it was a thrilling moment to see these desperate stories which challenge our capacity to hope being performed by people with English as a second language on a huge stage in Westminster Central Hall, proudly challenging hope to come and do its work. So we continue in hope for that change to take place. We're not quite there yet. But I have actually, this morning, just received a text, and I want to share part of it with you, because we have been, with this group, campaigning for arts organisations. So along the river in London, we have a lot of key arts organisations, the South Bank Centre, the Hayward Gallery, the National Film Theatre, the National Theatre, the Globe Theatre, the Tate Modern. And there's been some action and campaigning to ask those organisations to become accredited living wage employers. A lot of them might pay their paid employed staff the living wage, but not paying their contracted staff, cleaners, security workers, people who work in hospitality, not paying them the living wage. And here's the message I received just this morning, just to plant those seeds of hope. 10 months ago, we started our living wage campaign on the South Bank, targeting big, iconic employers. On the 3rd of August 2023, we invited the Tate Museum, National Theatre, the London Eye, the Globe, the British Film Institute, and the Aquarium to meet us to talk about becoming living wage employers. First, we got a meeting with the Globe Theatre. They committed to becoming a living wage employer. They haven't done it yet though. Then we took action again in October and visited the Tate Modern. They finally became a living wage employer last month, a huge win. And then last month, many in this WhatsApp group, so that includes the Latin American domestic workers who I've been working with, and we performed a piece of theatre outside another of the major institutions that I will not name because I'm not allowed to yet, but we performed our play outside that building, demanding the director meet with us. They said no in October, but now, this is today's message, a meeting may well be convened in the near future for that institution to also become an accredited living wage employer. I have to be honest, I just thought this is never going to happen. When we did our performance, I was like, come on, like, is this having an effect? But of course, it's not that one thing, is it? It's the small accumulative moments of building up, challenging the powers, challenging hope to come and do its work. In his book, Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky, who's the father of community organising, he says, imagination ignites and feeds the force that drives the organiser to organise for change. And in theatre and organising, we imagine and then we rehearse the hope that we want to see. And in so doing, we're kind of moving between two worlds. The world as it is and the world as it should be. Imagination, says Edward T. Chambers, he wrote a follow-up book called Roots for Radicals. He says imagination lets us glimpse a world that has not yet materialised and move mentally back and forth between what was and what is and what is and what might be. And that place of tension in between these two worlds is, I believe, where it kind of gets interesting. I do that. It's the kind of grit in the oyster, if you like. Because perhaps it's where we are also today. At that point of tension, the now and the not yet. The where we are, but where we would love to be. And this point of tension is not inert, and it's not passive. It's actually very active. It's like the cat before it pounces. Very active, and yet somehow still. Or the sprinter, the Olympics coming up, the sprinter on the get-set point, hovering, full of energy, and a movement which is about to explode into being in that 100-metre sprint, but they haven't yet left the blocks. So it's in that moment that I think we often dwell, those of us who want to challenge hope and seek hope. But in my work, I'm privileged to do, we practice it first. We rehearse it first. Now, I'm very well aware that the minute anyone comes from the world of theatre to a conference, lots of people just go, oh no, what are they going to make me do? So, I know that, I do know that, so don't panic. I was at a conference last week. I also do some corporate training, and I was training battery-operated truck salesmen. 2 women. Daft Trucks have got an amazing new battery-operated vehicle coming. I can tell you a lot about these vehicles. Anyway, they on the first night said over dinner, what are we doing here? Because we'd done a couple of role plays and a couple of scenes, and there was so much fear. So just as a kind of flag up, if you do sign up for the workshop, I take it very seriously that I don't expose people and people don't feel strange and I don't ask you to be a tree. It's all good. It's all stuff that you already do. It's just how can we intentionally use it for hope. So I wonder if you might, I'm just going to invite us to do some things maybe just as individuals. No one's got to come out their chair, but I do believe in the actual bodily practice of hope and the crafting of it in a space. So don't join in if you don't wish to, do join in if you feel like it. So in your chairs, I'm going to invite you, if you've got anything in your hands, just put it down. And if I get a chair, and you won't be able to see me, I'll do it on this chair. It's just a little bit of practice to remind ourselves that we're often very disembodied, aren't we? Lots of brainy people in here, so we're in our heads. So we're gonna be in our heads and our bodies. So if I'm you and I'm kind of, oh, it's quite nice to speak at the conference and stuff like that, So I'm gonna invite you to sit forward in your chair, and if you can, I can't on this chair, but put your feet flat on the floor, your toes pointing forward, and stick your butt towards the back of the chair, so that immediately your back is a bit straighter. Are you all right with that? And now I'm going to invite you to slouch. Lovely, lovely slouch. That's it. This is how kind of you might want to be sitting today. So just Let those hands go, let the spine go. And then I would like you to imagine that you have a golden thread and it goes from the base of your spine all the way up your back and it comes out the top of your head. And I'd like you to take a hold of your golden thread, which is coming out the top of your head. So if you have a quick look at me, I'm taking a hold of my little thread. Yeah. So, and then we're just going to pull that thread really, really slowly up. So all we're doing is elongating our spine. If this is available to you, pain or injury, please do not take part. That's me telling you to stop. Alright, that's your golden thread and just let go. Okay, so the shoulders are super loose, but we're just a bit taller than we were. Okay, and then I'm just going to invite you to breathe in deeply and breathe out slowly through your mouth. And if you feel comfortable doing so, maybe just roll those shoulders back. Really slowly. And then in the other direction, roll your shoulders forward if this is available to you. And just only participate if you're able to, if you wish to. Take your right hand and stretch it right up. And then maybe just over a little bit so you get a bit of a stretch. You look beautiful. This is gorgeous. It's like raw ballet. And then the other hand, go up and over. Just kind of saying hello to the body. Okay, and just have a little shake there. I'm going to invite you to consider a situation which you right now are finding is one side, just no hope there. That's a real tough one. Almost like the kind of like big wooden door in front of you that you haven't got the key, just can't get to the other side of that door. And so as you sit there with your lovely golden thread and your long spine and your feet on the floor, relaxed and present in this moment, you might feel happier doing this with your eyes closed. Up to you. This is private and personal work. Take a moment to think, okay, what's the situation, be it global or local, perhaps personal, where it feels really challenging to hope for anything. And I'm going to invite you to find a way of expressing that bodily. Now we're sitting. If you want to stand up and do that, please, honestly, feel free. It's great. I just want to keep it nice and contained so that you don't feel exposed. So what might that look like in the body? I'm going to stand up and just walk around a bit. In your shoulders, where does it live? That idea of hopelessness or difficulty in accessing hope. You know, where would you place your knees or your feet, the shoulders? Maybe if you can even begin to, if you were a piece of clay, mould yourself into an image that somehow expresses for you what that looks like. Your arms might need to come out. I'm just thinking of, for me, I'm pushing against something. So you don't have to actually describe what it is. It can be very abstract, but I'm just inviting you to find. And then as you do that, to think, where in my body does it kind of live? Is it in my head? Is it in my stomach? Is it in the tension in my neck? Are my feet somehow involved in this? All right, and then just if you were to take a photograph of yourself from the outside, have a look at yourself objectively. What do you look like? How does it feel? Thank you for participating. Now, stay there. Right, that's the now and the not yet. All right, so we're going to move into this space in between. I want you to imagine what it would feel like when that hope comes and that situation is transformed. Would you now move into what that expression is for you bodily of the hope arriving? Wonderful. Lovely. One finally, then if you go back into the hopelessness, and then I want us just to focus on that bit in between the journey. So if we were back to where you were, where the hope is not there, and then now in that journey, make that journey into the place of hope, make the journey in your body, and notice what you need to do to get there. Great. And you may return to whatever is your comfortable position. It's that journey in between that is good for us to begin to articulate and to know in our body, in ourselves. I saw lots of opening, and there were hands, and there were eyes, and there was shoulders, and it was really glorious. Thank you for taking part in that. So I'm finishing, and I just want to say that for me, a recent expression of what hope is, really a bit of a favourite of mine, came from reading Cynthia Bourgeau. She's an Episcopal priest and a contemplative teacher. And she says, hope's home is at the innermost part of us. It's in all things. It does not come at the end as a feeling that results from a happy outcome. Rather, it lives at the beginning as a pulse of truth that sends us forth. So may we all be able to tune into that pulse of truth that sends us forth into the day. Thank you.